Mandy because she asked me to talk a little bit about the Kavanaugh nomination and sort of what it means and my thoughts about it. And so I'm going to go through an overview. The main thing to know is that today's Thursday, the 20th. There may be a vote that's a pivotal vote on Monday. So if you feel convicted about this issue, if you care about it, if you care about women's safety, consider calling especially Republican representatives and letting them know how you feel about this, how important it is. While I'm talking, hello to everyone who's joined. While I'm talking, just let me know if you have any questions and I'll try to respond to those. So Brett Kavanaugh was nominated by the president to become the next Supreme Court justice to replace Justice Kennedy. So the president gets to nominate a Supreme Court justice. That's how the system works. And then the Senate confirms the Supreme Court justice. The Senate is in that process right now. The Republicans have said that they want to vote on Monday before any investigation has been done into the history of Brett Kavanaugh and sexual assault allegations that he's been accused of. This is a really important issue in the United States because the Supreme Court decides what is constitutional and what is unconstitutional. For example, in Oregon, this 2 years ago now, I think, the Oregon Supreme Court made a crucial change in how they interpreted the Oregon Constitution that still impacts victims of stigmatizing crimes today. This stuff happens all the time where a court can change their views on what is constitutional, what's not constitutional. And so this is a really important issue to pay attention to. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the accusation. So I don't typically like to use the name of victims who have come forward around stigmatizing crimes. The reason it is allowed to do that, it's not considered bad form in the news industry. But here's the thing, the woman that came forward accusing Brett Kavanaugh of having sexually assaulted her is a professor. She's like a psychology professor in a university. She has academic work that she's doing. This experience does not define her life. And so at this point, though, when you Google her name, all that comes up is that she's been a victim of a stigmatizing crime. She chose to make her name public, and I have a ton of respect for her for that. I think that when we put our names on our experiences, it's very powerful. It gives a face to the experience in a way that people can't pass it by, can't excuse it the way that they can when our names aren't associated with it. But it is a huge sacrifice to do that. So the woman's name, I am going to say it in this, is Christine Blasey Ford. There are a number of rumors about her and sort of tweets and misinformation about her. The New York Times yesterday published it went through the rumors that are incorrect about her and what is actually true in those situations. And so I'm going to post that in the comments when I'm done. But she basically is a respected professor. At first she came forward, and I'm going to talk now about what the accusations are. So just be trigger warned. So she says that when Brett Kavanaugh was 17 and she was 15, they were at a party. She was in her bathing suit, and he and some other guys, either one or two other guys, took her into a room and tried to rip off her clothes and held her down. She ended up getting away because one of the guys jumped on Brett Kavanaugh while he was attacking her, and she ran out. So sometimes there's a misunderstanding that sexual assault and rape are always the same thing. Sexual assault can mean any kind of touching that's of a sexual nature that is unwelcome, right? So because this was a sexual nature, it's considered sexual assault even though it wasn't a rape. Okay, so that's the accusation. So then I want to talk about sort of the problems people have with this and what I think is important for us to consider. So one of the issues people have brought up who are defending Brett Kavanaugh is that we shouldn't be blamed for things that we've done in high school. And I think to a certain extent, there's some fairness to that. People do dumb stuff in high school. There was a good Daily Show clip on this, like people eat food off the floor in high school and I don't know, like do a bunch of crazy stuff. But it's not normal behavior for someone to sexually assault another person, even if you're in high school. It's not typical. It is the minority of people who commit that kind of violence. And so normalizing that in a way that's like, oh, this is just high school behavior is not accurate to how humans behave. It is actually dangerous behavior. And so saying like, somehow excusing it because it was in high school doesn't really fly with me. The other thing to think about with this is that becoming a Supreme Court justice is not a right. It's not like, oh yeah, you committed bank fraud when you were in high school, but I guess we can look past that and now you get to become a Supreme Court justice. It's not to say anyone who has committed a crime in their past should just be excluded from society, never allowed in. But when we're talking about who's going to become the decider of what's constitutional in our country, that is a much higher bar than just like, I guess boys have misconduct sometimes. Like these are the people that we're saying are representing our highest moral truth. So the other problem that I have with saying this is a one-time incident is that we know that when someone is willing to cross a line, they typically cross that line more than once. And I'm not saying that there are more women who have come forward. I don't know of any other women who have come forward. And in fact, I read that a number of women who knew him in high school are supporting Brett Kavanaugh. So you see this often as a problem in domestic violence situations. And I'm just going to use the traditional gender pronouns because typically it is a man abusing a woman, but not always. So what I see a lot in these situations and what the literature and research sort of shows is that the victim, I'm going to say the woman, is in this relationship with a man who abuses her. They go through a cycle of violence where he apologizes, says he gets it, he's going to change, they reunite, and he does it again. And the reason for that is that when you are willing to engage in a certain behavior, you're willing to engage in that behavior. So a lot of people will say like, oh, this guy was drunk, alcohol was involved, or drugs, or he's addicted, or all of these things. But we know most people don't commit violent behavior when they're drunk. So alcohol does not cause violent behavior. The fact that someone is willing to cross the line into violence is what creates violent behavior. So when someone's willing to cross a line into violence or is accused of that, it's just something to question. Most people are not willing to cross that line, even high school kids. Okay, what's my next? Okay, so the other important thing, especially if you live in Oregon, that I want you to know is that in most states, victims of a crime are allowed to use a pseudonym. So like Jane Doe or like their initials when they report a crime or when they sue in a civil court for a crime. This has become a big issue in Oregon right now, and we're actively working to try to protect victims of stigmatizing crime so that they can still come forward using John Doe and Jane Doe names. In those situations, the person they're accusing always knows their name, or almost always. In almost all situations, the person accused knows the accuser's name. But it's a different question whether the public gets to know that person's name. And it goes back to what I was saying before. So right now, if you Google Christine Blasey Ford, her name is associated with sexual assault, not with her academic accomplishments. And that is a huge sacrifice for someone to make to try to protect the public. Often the hardest issues with this come in small town issues. So the children who were abused by church members, like priests or pastors, as children who are now adults and come forward to make their claims, often use pseudonyms to make them. Because, so say you were abused as a child, now you're a bank manager in a small town, your abuser still lives in that small town, you don't want the newspapers to put your name all over the front page that now you're no longer this bank manager, you're a victim of sexual assault. It is a tough issue to decide, and like a soul-searching issue to decide to put your name on a stigmatizing crime that you were the victim of, because you're still associated with that crime, even though you weren't the one who was at fault in it. So if you live in Oregon, wherever you live, find out the rights for people to do this, support those rights. The argument against it is that courts need to be open to the public, and that is not a reason not to use pseudonyms at the outset in these cases. When the cases go to trial, people do use their names and the courts are open. But ahead of time, it provides a lot of safety and protection for victims of crimes when they are able to use a pseudonym, so that they're able to appear at trial. So if they're receiving threats because their name is associated with these accusations, they're much less likely to go forward and actually testify and hold the people accountable and just tell their story. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is just in general how we think of stigmatizing crimes. So now you're searching, you're going to school and you find out Christine Blasey Ford is your professor. And you're like, I wonder, you know, what her publications are. I wonder what her background is. And you search for it and it comes up and all it talks about is sexual assault. And so there are a lot of sort of stereotypes and biases that we have around people who have experienced stigmatizing crimes. And often they're very steeped in gender and race biases. So what I would ask is we picture this young woman who's saying that she had her clothes ripped off in this room by this person who has been nominated for the Supreme Court. And often what we do is we associate women as victims anyway, or as weak anyway. And so we are less shocked that that would happen to her than we are if it were a man. So just take a minute and just for yourself, think about, would you encounter this story differently if it was the story of a young 15-year-old boy and he had his clothes ripped off by Brett Kavanaugh? Would that be a different story to you? And if so, why? And do you want to question that? Would it be worse? Would it be better? Why would it be different? And then the other bias that we have is around sex. And this goes to like the puritanical American like way that most of us were raised. So if Brett Kavanaugh had held her down and started strangling her, punching her in the face, and she was fully clothed and there was no issue of sex, would it be different? Would you view him as a more violent person or a less violent person? Just to question our own biases. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to question our own biases around sex and around gender and who we view as victims and how stigmatizing it is for someone to come forward with this kind of crime. Because even though more and more people are standing up to this behavior, it's very hard and not enough people feel comfortable or safe doing this for a good reason. It's because we have these biases. So I went to the Resist bot and I sent a message to my representatives in Congress, and I hope that you will feel motivated to do that too. It is a majority, like, I guess slightly majority Republican. And so if you feel like reaching out to some of the Republican Congress people, I think that that can make a big difference in this kind of situation. It's a really important issue. Supreme Court justices don't have terms, so this is a lifelong appointment. It can last decades that he'll have this kind of power. It's not a right for someone to get into a Supreme Court justice position. It's a privilege, and they need to earn it. And the people we put in there should represent our moral compass. If you guys have questions, I hope you'll post them. If you watch the replay, I hope you'll let me know. So your homework is either ask me questions about why you don't feel comfortable talking to your representative, and you can do it in a private message. I'll respond to you, or talk to your representative, send a message saying that you oppose his confirmation. Your higher level homework, if you're willing to accept it, is to be honest with someone you love about something that you might be embarrassed about, that is part of your life, that you maybe are ready to not be embarrassed about and to accept and to put your name on. It doesn't have to be to the public, but just to someone that you're comfortable with. And if you're not comfortable with anybody, I'm always happy to hear your story. Okay, I hope you guys have a lovely weekend, and I hope that Brett Kavanaugh is not confirmed into the Supreme Court. Bye.